Hi, this is Stephanie John, licensed marriage and family therapist, and welcome back to Reflect and Rewind. So we're gonna just jump right into it. So this is season 2, episode 5 of Being Mary Jane. So grab your blanket, get comfortable, and let's reflect and rewind. Okay, so we're gonna start off this episode. Mary Jane's like sitting at the edge of her bed, about to get the news or anticipating the news of her getting the results of her follicle count, because most of this episode is really gonna be about Mary Jane's family planning, right? And being questioned and challenged around it. So she goes to the doctor, and the doctor is checking her. This is all live, mind you, all live. I don't know if I could have done it. She is a brave soul to do this. But she gets checked, and the doctor quickly tells her some news that was like super discouraging. The doctor did try his best to reassure her that it could be a myriad of reasons why the results are not what they want it to be. And Mary Jane kind of can't just wrap her mind around the thing. So she is live. So she's starting to have like an emotional reaction. She tries her best to kind of push through all the motions of it. Kara jumps in and tries to like almost like mother her through the moment there.
Okay? Breathe. Listen, I know I can put Gail on, and she can do the closing of the show. But I know you want to finish this strong. You understand? Just sign off, Mama.
Relationship is so interesting because as much as they're friends, there are a lot of moments where I do find Kara as like the mama bear of the studio, you know? So she mama bears her through it, gives her a pep talk, almost tells her to like suck it up and swallow it down and do the damn thing. And I wonder too why a possibility that Kara could be even more like, no, Mary Jane's gonna close out her own show. I'm pretty sure TV etiquette, she should. But also we do know from the last episode that I didn't discuss then, but I'll bring it up now. It looks like the job is once again challenging Mary Jane's place in the in the network. So I think to keep Mary Jane in pocket and essentially save her job, Kara is trying to make sure that she closes out her show, that she shows some level of strength in this thing, knowing some of the background stuff that's happening on the business side of things that Mary Jane doesn't know about just yet. So the cameras go off, and Mary Jane loses it on Kara, which indicates to me Mary Jane didn't think about all the things that could go wrong. She wasn't prepared, right? And I am a huge advocate around perinatal mental health. I think I could have said this in the first video where this idea of her even doing the show, but regardless of the fact, I strongly do believe that a pregnant person should have services to mental health, perinatal mental health care during their planning for a baby, having a baby, postpartum segment of their life, and maybe even the first 3 years of having that child. I truly believe that. Why, you say? Because it's a lot. You see this in Mary Jane's journey, just the hormonal change of the mental health, but then the environmental, the lack of support, too much support, not even knowing what you wanted, and ultimately Mary Jane, especially for her in this case, is doing it alone. There's no partner. Right? There's no partner. So then who is Mary Jane giving some of her thoughts and needs to, and being filled and supported in that way on an ongoing basis? We would have to assume, and then she lives on her own. Like, there's not much. Let alone the fact that Mary Jane essentially also lives two lives, right? Like, she's Mary Jane to some and Pauletta to others. So there is a separation as to like who she lets in when it comes to this. And if we're keeping that in mind, this is happening as she's more Mary Jane than she even is Pauletta. And I don't know, it feels like potentially Paulette is the person that got let down while Mary Jane was just doing the job. Right? So Pauletta needed the care more than Mary Jane. And the truth of the matter is, Kara don't know Pauletta. Kara don't know that person, but that person's what showed up. So, and I would dare even say Mary Jane's the one who cursed her out for not protecting Pauletta. That's my theory, right? So she curses her out, and once again, I think the cursing out is a little bit unfair, because it puts the blame on Kara and not on Mary Jane, slowing down her life enough to know what she wants out of this experience, and knew the risk of this experience, and then made her decision. Like, that is kind of on you, Mary Jane, to find out. And this is also why I think everyone needs their therapist for this season of life, to help you process all the things, as much of the things as possible, because some of the thoughts I think she's gone off on Kara about are things that could have been reconciled before this situation happened. Personal opinion. That's how I feel. So she gets the bad news, and yeah, so her going through this idea as to, like, did she do this for a story, did she do this for herself, is also a constant theme too, right? Like, did she do this because an opportunity came up, or did Pauletta truly want a family, truly want children? And that answer, I don't think, was made clear even by the end of this situation, because the truth is, I don't think she really knows, you guys. I don't think she knows the answer to the question. And this comes up often throughout this whole entire episode, this theme of being questioned and challenged around this. I also think, like I said, I question Mary Jane's friendship and how she shows up as a friend. So, of course, this is live, so they pan to the mom, somehow making this about her and questioning Mary Jane's choices. In a lot of ways, it sounded like Mary Jane's inner critic. I'll tell you that all the time. And then she looks to the dad as to, like, how you gonna fix this? Because, like I said before, I have solved the riddle. Dad is the family peacemaker. That is his job. He is the fixer. He's the peacemaker. What I do like about the dad, though, is that he's also honest. He's not passive. He's gentle. Dad is gentle. And he's honest. But there's a softness, a nurturingness about him, which is so interesting, considering that you usually use that trait with women. And Mom, and even Pauletta, and even sometimes Niecy, has this, like, harshness from them, that's very interesting how the women end up getting that trope. And then you have this dad that's, like, very gentle, very caring, and also reliable, because throughout this episode as well, you see the family turn to him for advice or allow him to speak. And when he does speak, everyone listens. So there's a respect for this man as well, right? His gentleness is not considered weakness in this family at all. It's actually, I think everyone knows of the strength that he actually has, while everyone else, the harshness that the women have is a little tantrumy, so I would even dare say at some point in time, I'll hold that because I wanna bring that up a little later. And then you also see Mary Jane drinking again, like constantly drinking. So we've been seeing this theme of Mary Jane drinking often, which goes back to the thought process is, like, does she drink to cope, or is she drinking from habit? I don't know the answer to the question. However, it is something that also should be challenged. Niecy brought this up. We've seen it throughout the episodes. And then she hears this bad news, and you see her often go up to drink. And anytime she's heard bad news in the last few episodes, that's what we're noticing. So I have questions about her drinking, what it's used for, what does it help her do, and when after she drinks, what is happening in her, like, inner world. Like, is it quieting something out? Does it allow her to escape? Like, what is the ask of this substance that is allowing her to fill in the blank? Only she would be able to tell us that. So she comes home and she sees Lisa. And with Lisa, it starts off one way. Lisa seems like she just really wanted to comfort Mary Jane, and it seems like Mary Jane had no tolerance for it. She wasn't for it at all. And it quickly turned to a very cutthroat kind of argument. And once again, Mary Jane was so mean to her.
Find out they're completely unprepared. Who is ever prepared for a baby? I'm just saying that maybe right now, your lifestyle isn't conducive to having a child. I'm sorry, conducive? What? Conducive, helpful, in alignment. Don't write a definition, Lisa. I need to know where you get off questioning my lifestyle.
So mean. And was just rude, and Lisa tried to call her out on it. And I mean, granted, Lisa did come in there and said some things that were very honest and very direct, and I don't think anyone wants to hear the things that she had to say at the time. But the truth of the matter is, Mary Jane has been swatting Lisa off of her left and right. And in this discussion, we find out that there was a love triangle between Lisa, David, and Mary Jane.
You kept calling David your friend, so he asked me out. I did not accept until you said okay. So don't come in my house and try to lecture me about accepting my decisions. Lisa, wake up. He didn't want.
It seems like Lisa was the one who liked David first. David could have been more her friend, and Mary Jane first wasn't going to date him until she asked Lisa. Lisa said okay, but she didn't really mean okay. So that also means on Lisa, she gotta mean what she says what she means. And Mary Jane ends up dating David. And Mary Jane tells her, David did not like you. He didn't want you, you know. And then Lisa, touche, says, well, he don't want you either. And it was such an ugly fight, which often makes me think, like, are they friends because they just known each other for a while? Because I haven't really seen her be nice. Or does Mary Jane feel responsible for Lisa? Because the last time I really seen her in a caring role with Lisa was like in those beginning sessions. Being really mean. Mary Jane's being really mean. I told you guys, I don't think Mary Jane's a good friend. And in this episode, I also think that she's very selective as to who she talks to like this, right? Because I note she does not talk to Mark like this at all. She doesn't talk to Mark like this. Like at the end, you see her just like confront Mark, like, why did you let me do this? But it felt more playful. And Lisa, she has a tendency to tear into, like she tears into her family. But I digress. So, Lisa is also trying to express to her, outside of the love triangle, but she's also trying to express to her like her genuine concerns for her. For Mary Jane, right? Like maybe this wasn't the best timing, considering your stress, considering that you haven't changed certain parts of your lifestyle in order to prepare for a baby. Like usually people who are wanting a baby starts to prepare for one, whether that be their drinking habits, their exercise habits, their living habits, changing up some of their job flow, trying to pull back on certain things, especially if we're not talking about having a baby in theory. She was actively trying to have a baby and actively freeze her eggs. So she's in the active participation in a lot of the baby making stuff, right? Even though she wasn't trying to necessarily go through with the pregnancy, there's still some health considerations that Lisa is trying to express to her. And the funny thing is, Lisa would be the person to ask. Lisa would be the person to tell. Was she not? Especially considering Lisa is a doctor. Not just a doctor. She's an OB. Like, this is her field. And why does Mary Jane feel like she can just dismiss Lisa's input? And then we find out why. She thinks that Lisa is jealous of her because of this whole David scenario. I personally don't know how we got from that to this, because I feel like this didn't have to deal with David. I feel like Mary Jane is hurting, so she's just looking to hurt someone else, and she brings up the David scenario. And that's when we find out that they have this love triangle thing, which is also a very interesting piece around Lisa stating that she wanted loyalty from Mary Jane. And Mary Jane kind of dismissed that from her. I think not realizing that Lisa may have had deep feelings for him, or he could have been leading her on as well and not taking that into consideration. But it seems like, which I remember her brother saying a while ago, her older brother in the first season, that Mary Jane will do almost anything to get the things that she wants, regardless of how it may affect the people around her. You know? And and that had nothing to do with this particular scenario, but I do recall that. So I wonder, there's a possibility that this could have played out underneath those same pretenses, patterns that we've seen, or other people have expressed to us about Mary Jane, you know? Um, and then it brought up this idea of a question is like, can someone truly prepare for a baby? Mary Jane's debate was no, you can't. No one's ever ready for a baby. And in that way, I would agree, right? Like, no one's ever really ready. You'll know, like, there's certain aspects of having a baby you won't know until you have yours. Part of it is there's some very unwritten, if you're a spiritual type, spiritual exchange that happens during that process. Also, your baby's gonna come with their own stuff that someone else's baby may not come with, right? Colic, how do they sleep? Are they a stomach sleeper versus this? Or breastfeed versus bottle feed? Like, there's so many different dynamics in raising a kid that could be different. So therefore, you'll never fully be ready. However, I do agree with Lisa in the idea that there are certain things that you can do to prepare yourself for that situation. For instance, Mary Jane even going through this process and not considering the other alternative of this being actually more difficult than what she expected is something she could have prepared herself for to a degree. And it seems like she didn't think about it at all. Like, at all. And with that being said, she ended up getting her feelings deeply hurt because of the lack of consideration. The very thing that in a lot of ways Lisa's trying to express to her, that you didn't slow down enough to consider. Right? And she done chew off this girl's head and spit it out, and just created a lot of separation between her and this girl, which is very unfortunate considering that they are long-term friends. But then I feel like that's like with an asterisk, right? Like I said before, is she friends with this girl just because of time? Because it doesn't seem like she's actually friends with this girl based off of like actions and how like she thinks of Lisa, respects Lisa. Like, it feels like this friendship is missing something in it. Um, then we get to the David piece. David comes by the house. Once again, this thing was live, so David comes by the house, gives her these flowers. David's confusing, y'all. He's so confusing because it feels like things are not as great as it is back at home. Like, it's complicated there, and he's willing to always keep the door open for Mary Jane. And Mary Jane often leans into those bids, right? And he says to her, like, no matter what did he say exactly? Well, he says this to her.
I'm always going to be here. Some things are complicated, but this doesn't need to be one of them.
So essentially, he's always going to be there, like, no matter what. And then on the flip side, me thinking about his girlfriend, the mother of his child, how does that work in that scenario, right? Where technically someone is always involved. Someone else is always involved into the relationship. You're not really committed. You're not. And Mary Jane and you have never actually fully been committed to the actual relationship you're in because you guys keep on playing around with all these other partners, you know? And then Mary Jane kind of feels, you can see a little flattering in her face about him saying that to her. Which brings me to the point of like the whole Niecy thing. Like last episode, I said when Niecy went to meet with Cameron and you saw her slowly go backwards as the night progressed, and then even to the next day where they end up sleeping together and stuff, like, and Mary Jane finds them, calls her out, and says everything's not about a man and a child. And once again, Mary Jane finds herself having very theme-wise similar conversations. A man about a child. You know, and a man that she can't shake, the same way how Niecy can't shake off her person. But she was real quick to get on Niecy about her not being tired of her life and her choices, right? Her bad choices. And yet Mary Jane is making bad choices as well, but she doesn't see him in that way, you know? So it's very pot call the kettle a little bit. So it is also interesting. I also noted that in this exchange with David, she did not give David that same fever. She doesn't. She kind of folds a little bit with David to a sense. Granted, they have this bicker, right? But they both, Lisa and David, are both old time friends. Lisa comes to check in on her. She tears Lisa a new one. David comes in to check on her. Soft and mushy on the inside. Like very different energies for people who in the initial had the same intentions, which is to check in on her. Granted, Lisa did come in a way that could be a little bit inflammatory, not inherently inflammatory, but can be seen that way. And David didn't, but David in a lot of ways wouldn't he technically be to some degree, I'm not saying this is the perfect math at all, but to some degree the reason why you're in this situation, right? Like, because that's a person who's actually in a relationship with, that's a person who actually had a hard time committing to you, that's a person who's actually having a baby with someone else, that's the person, right? Like, there's so many moments where he's have negatively impacted this relationship and he don't get that fever of just like, I can't do this right now, I just lost my odds of having this thing and you're living this life. Like, none of that fever, but Lisa got it. It's just interesting. I just took note of that. Like I said, she also doesn't do that to Mark either. So it's like, what is it around, I guess, the men where they feel like they kind of get this softer thing from her while the women friends get a meaner version of her. Just a theory, not a perfect science, but just a theory. It's just something to note. What do we have? Okay, so then we have Niecy. We meet Niecy real quick. And Niecy it looks like Cameron's trying to step up and be a dad while he's in town. And Niecy is being mean to him, which is not surprising considering these women are very similar. Women being Mary Jane, Niecy, and the grandmother. They have a tendency to be like mean and use their power when they can. And Niecy doesn't have much power in a lot of scenarios, but when it comes to Cameron, she does have the upper hand, which is, I've been around these kids and you don't. And you don't be around your kid. So he's kind of like, bro, you're making my life hard. I'm trying to do the things. The grandmother comes downstairs and it's just like, girl, everything's not about you. Like, some things you have to do, you do it for your kids. You're asked to, and then the grandmother has him come back later on in the day, and Niecy kind of feels undermined, and then the grandmother pulls her over and she's like, listen, once again, you cannot just do something without thinking about the kids in mind, and you also have to let that man be a father and try to figure it out. Don't make it hard for him, but also don't jump for joy for him. Like, no one's saying that you got to do the most, but he doesn't essentially have to prove much to you or disrespect, like, or like, he doesn't have to prove much to you to some degree, right? Like, as long as he's respectful to you, which he has been, right? All that other stuff is really between him and his son. Unless he's putting this kid in harm, you should kind of essentially just be like, out of the way and allow him to be a dad. And if he's going to show up, he's going to show up. And if he don't, he don't. But that's a relationship ultimately between him and his son, period. And Niecy cries a little bit because in this speech, the grandmother says that she really does care about Niecy and loves her and really wants her to be very proactive in her life and stop being so passive, essentially, and like take charge of your life and stop being a victim to your life. Like, do life, make intentional choices. Make intentional, better choices. And it does seem that Niecy may not have felt loved or cared for. Because it's probably the first time I think I've seen her be like very emotional in that way, which I think to some extent also highlights the respect that she does have for her grandmother. And also to Nogue. Grandma's been doing well. Considering the first season, she was dealing very like heavily in her lupus symptoms and stuff, and this season it feels like it's not as much of an issue. So go grandma. Um. Oh, and then quickly we see PJ. PJ is getting his life together. He ain't the kid on the corner, uh, just being a little brother doing random jobs. But he looks like he's finally graduated. It looks like it feels like he's taking the architecture seriously. Seems like he took the weed money and actually invested it in places that allows him to not have to do the weed stuff as much anymore. That's what it seems like. He has his opportunity. He tries to bring David, or he does bring David into this opportunity. However, the caveat for David was that Mary Jane had to be okay with it. Before he spoke to David about this opportunity, he did go to his dad to get some insight as to what to do. And once again, this highlights dad's respect that he has in this family, or the respect that people in the family have for dad. That's a better way of putting it. That they do go to him. This family goes to dad for so many things, and he's so poised in his response, and he makes everyone, I think, in the family like critically think by the words that he uses and his insight. And he brings to PJ's point, like, yeah, you could talk to your friend, and I'm guessing his friend is white. You can have your friend in on this deal, but you may potentially get pushed out of this deal because ultimately you don't have the capital, and you don't want to do all this work just to have essentially this boy and his family take control over the situation. And this is why we stick to our own. They do it, so we should be sticking on to our own as well. So that is actually the one I was just saying, like, David actually being your financial backing may be your best bet for the deal, but also for you in the long run, because ultimately we all know he loved Pauletta. And the truth of the matter is, he may be the only person that knows Pauletta, not necessarily Mary Jane, but like outside, like in the case of the dating people. And she and in that, the likelihood is also in your favor too. Like, someone with capital, why not use that relationship? And it seemed like it worked out in his favor at the end of the episode. So good for PJ. Good for PJ. So yeah, that was it for today's episode of Being Mary Jane, episode 5, season 2. Yeah, so I guess if there was something to comment below, I would say, one, do you think Mary Jane's a good friend? You can comment your answers below and write your reasons as to why or why not. Also, what do you think about, like, what are your thoughts around that argument with Lisa and Mary Jane? Like, you heard my thoughts, but like, what are your thoughts? Do you think people are able to prepare? Do you think Mary Jane came out of left field with her accusations around this love triangle? Like, did it have actually relevance into the topic that was actually at hand, and do you think Lisa was coming at the situation as a jealous friend, or actually coming to the situation with real concerns for her friend? you know? And do you see this parallel between her and Niecy? Or is it just me? Do you guys see it? So yeah, comment below. But that's it for today for Reflect and Rewind. Peace.